Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just is isn't always justice. These are the powerful words of Amanda Gorman's inauguration poem. Hello, everyone. My name is Soribel Henao, and I am so excited and proud to welcome you to our 2021 Black History Celebration. As one of the inaugural Diversity Fellows, Professor of Educational Leadership, and member of the Black and Latinx Faculty and Staff Association, we welcome you. Without each and every member, this would not be possible. Thank you, BLFSA. I am thrilled to be part of such an important endeavor at Queens College. Our theme, Sankofa, reminds us that in order to understand our present and ensure our future, we must know our past. Today, we welcome you to learn, be a part of our history beyond February. We look forward to an amazing program. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session, Grassroots Youth Activism as a Bridge to Elective Office, featuring Assembly Member Khalil Anderson. My name is Professor Simone Yearwood. I'm the Deputy Chief Librarian at Queens College Rosenthal Library. And today I would like to welcome Assembly Member Anderson. Assembly Member Anderson is the youngest Black Assembly member in New York State history. He was elected to serve Assembly District 31 in Queens for his first term in November 2020. Anderson represents parts of Arverne, Brookville, Far Rockaway, Hamels, Rosedale, South Ozone Park, South Richmond Hill, Springfield Gardens, and John F. Kennedy International Airport. Anderson began his young career as a community organizer at the age of 13 and has since been dedicated to leadership, service, and advocacy. In 2011, he was an organizer for the local nonprofit that trains cohorts of youth in civic engagement. Anderson was the youngest member of Queens Community Board 14 and his local police precinct council during his tenure. Anderson's hard work, leadership, and dedication to his community has earned him recognition from Governor Andrew Cuomo, Congressman Gregory Meeks, and other state and local elected officials. Anderson is a leading voice in addressing issues of food insecurity, disaster preparedness, housing, transportation, healthcare planning in Assembly District 31. Prior to his election, he demonstrated his ability to govern while serving as a student activist and a respected community activist. He worked to build a half-acre urban farm which provides fresh produce, workshops, training on healthy eating, and employment opportunities for young people. He remains committed to amplifying the unique voices of young people and all his constituents. Anderson was born in Brooklyn and raised in the Rockaways. Khalil graduated Queens College from a BA program and is finalizing an MA in Urban Affairs with a minor in Cities and Social Medicine. He currently works as a supplemental instructor for the Percy E. Sutton Search for Education, Elevation, and Knowledge, which is known as the SEEK program at Queens College. As a new member of the legislative body, Khalil's priorities include housing and healthcare justice, criminal justice reform, educational equality, transportation equity, and environmental justice. Good morning, Khalil.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction, Professor Yearwood, and good morning to everyone. And happy Black History Month as we celebrate after what was a tumultuous year last year. It's important for us to celebrate our history, but it's also important for us to celebrate our future, to celebrate the things that we're going to do as a community and as a people. To lead our communities forward, to lead the movement forward, but to also address some of the systemic racial disparities and impacts that plague our neighborhoods and have plagued our neighborhoods for decades. And so this is our opportunity to celebrate Black history, to celebrate our Black futures, but to also understand that we don't only celebrate in the month of February, but we should be celebrating ourselves year round. So it's a great honor to be here back at my alma mater, to talk a little bit about what it's like to be in the space of youth activism and to now be in the space of local government and have an impact over individual communities and their lives and everything that comes with that in very, very important aspects. And so, as Professor Yearwood said, my name is Khalil Anderson. I am a member of the New York State Assembly. The New York State Assembly is the lower house of state government, and it's 150 members across the state of New York. Each member represents over 126,000 people. And so our responsibilities are to negotiate the New York State budget, to ensure that we're passing meaningful legislation to impact the lives of others, and thirdly, making sure that we have community initiatives that back up the work, the things that we're doing, both legislatively and through the budget. So it's a very, very important responsibility to have, to be a member of the Assembly, and I'm blessed that this community has given me the keys to the car to be able to drive our community forward, to be able to address some of the underlying deep-rooted issues such as lack of access to transportation and affordable housing, lack of access to fresh produce and healthy eating options. The things that our communities struggle and suffer through is wide-ranging, and so I'm blessed to have been honored to be elected to serve this community in a space where we can move our future forward as a people and as a community. So this has been a blessing. And so I've served as a member of the Assembly, but before, or I'm serving, excuse me, as a member of the Assembly, but before taking public office, I was a youth activist. I started out as an organizer, a community person who attended actions and rallies and demonstrations and planned actions, rallies, and demonstrations, right? Building relationship with community. And as I mentioned early on, as I was speaking, some of the systemic issues that we have here in the 31st Assembly District, and I didn't even get through all of them, but some of the things that I was focused on as a youth activist is food insecurity, something that we're seeing increase now as we are faced at the height of the pandemic, where people just can't afford to buy food because they might have lost their jobs or their homes or anything that would create a sense of stability for families has been torn apart because of COVID-19 and the many, many aspects of this virus actually exacerbated many of the underlying conditions and issues. And so, you know, as an activist and as an organizer, we were able to look at ways of slowing it and addressing the deep root causes of that. And how we did that was organized with groups of young people and groups and organizations in the neighborhood to build urban agriculture, to really empower our neighbors to understand that they can do for self. They can do for self in a way that's different from what's in front of them. They can do for self that provides nutrition and purpose to their lives, because a lot of the work that we were doing was empowering. And of course, you want to be able to build people from the ground up and be able to build not just them as a person, but their spirits. And so doing the work of being a community organizer and addressing food insecurity was key to my later success. And I have to absolutely credit the organizations that uplifted me and supported me as I grew as a leader and grew as an individual, and helped folks around me grow in that space.
So,
So
Assembly
I'm very.
Member, excuse me, I'm going to jump in there for a quick second and just throw a question at you. I hear what you're saying. Can you give us some insights? How does one go about becoming this activist and presenting and making these opportunities available? What advice would you give on getting people to that place where you were? How did you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor Yearwood. I would say how I was able to sort of hone in on what I was focused on. There are many, many aspects, many issues that our communities face. And so where I ended up was I picked an issue that I really wanted to impact. And it was young people. Really want to address the needs of young people. If you've ever lived here in Southeast Queens, I know you do, Ms. Yearwood, Professor Yearwood, or folks who are on the call, live in Southeast Queens, there are many things that we just don't have. Access to cultural institutions, recreation, things of that nature. And so we had to create opportunity. And so as an organizer and as an activist, I wanted to address some of the deep underlying root cause issues. And how we did that was looking at ways of creating the opportunities that weren't there. And so we knew that there wasn't a youth group, there wasn't an organization, there wasn't the extracurriculars and things of that nature. After school centers barely had the resources that they needed to push young people in the right direction. So we had to create it. So how I got here is I was a part of working with a youth organization here in the Rockaways to help build and create and empower young people so that we could get into the space of activism. And so we didn't see it. We didn't see a football team around. We didn't see your organizing group around. We didn't see young people in spaces of leadership or power. So we created it. It's the perfect in this I think there's a saying that says if you don't have a seat at the table, you gotta bring your own chair. And that's what we did as organizers. We brought our own chair to the seat of the table of not just power, but at the table of empowerment, at the table of resource building, at the table of just empowering the neighborhood. And so doing that work of creating and being a part of building organization and community was critically important. So, and I say that to say that people who are on the call today and who are listening in, if you don't see something in your community, be what the community needs, be what's missing, fill that void. You should feel empowered to fill that void, and you should not allow the barriers that might block you or try to or attempt to block you move you out the way of building that. And so we started this, we were a part of building an organization and allowing people to join that organization, young people to get trained, to get the skill set, to learn how to organize, to learn how to do for self, to learn how to empower. And so the issue that I focused on was young people, looking at the various different aspects of the life of a young person. We go to school, we come home. Very little is outside of that. And so we're expected to go to school, come home, go to the library, come home, very routine, if you will. And if you're living in a community like mine, where a lot of households are broken households, where it's just a single parent household, whether it's a single mother or a single father, you have to be able to create, and I grew up in a single parent household as well, but you have to be able to organize like-minded individuals, even if it's something as simple as saying, hey, every Friday, we're just going to have a discussion. And that's how the organization started. Every Friday, we're going to have a discussion about the things that we want to see changed. Every Thursday, we're going to have a text chat and just share some ideas on how we can build a community. Very grassroots, very ideation based, very focused on the cause and just cause analysis, right? Making sure that we analyze what and why and when and where. Is how you organize. So so it helps you stay focused. There are 100 different issues that our communities are faced with, but you want to remain focused on a or several key issues so that you are on a path to being able to impact as many people as possible. And so that's how we got started. We a group of young people that came together that said that we wanted to change something. We had venting sessions, we had spaces, and anybody can do this work. It just requires a passion and commitment. Commitment is vitally important, and consistency. Passion, commitment, and consistency. And so keeping those conversations going, keeping the energy going, and then channeling that energy into a space where we could actually impact change, starting at the grassroots. For me, I want to just go into a little context as to why I felt organizing was the right path. For me, I struggled as a young Black man growing up in Crown. Well, I lived in Crown Heights for 9 years and grew up in the Rockaways. I always struggled to find my voice. I always struggled to be able to know what I was upset about, what I was angry about, because I struggled with emotional health issues and concerns. And so it was just trying to find that guiding light and that direction, and I struggled with it. Grew up, like I said, grew up in a single parent household, low income, public assistance, Section 8, struggled to get by, but my mom always made a way. That's been a blessing for us, but there was that one link that was missing. I knew that when I was in school, I acted out. I wasn't the most well-behaved young person coming up in the public education system. By God's grace.
Go
By
ahead.
God's grace. No, absolutely. I wasn't always the most best behaved, but what propelled me forward were folks around me that interjected and provided guidance and healing, because it is a healing process to grow up in a community the way I did, and many of the folks who are on today's call. My story is not unique. This is unfortunately something specific to our neighborhoods, where there is an underlying level of trauma that our young people are faced. And so we lack outlets, we lack spaces to be able to get that energy out, to be able to express ourselves, to be able to hold ourselves in a high head and a high light, and we succumb to our circumstances. Rampant gun violence, lack of access to health care, single parent households, these systemic issues that perpetuate themselves around our neighborhoods and around our communities has bogged us down. And the reason why I wanted to give that additional context is to explain why I went down the path of activism. Like I said, I was always angry, always frustrated, and always in a space of rage and frustration. And there was no way to kind of guide and express myself at 8 and 9 and 10 years old. And so I acted out. And activism was a way for me to channel my inner self, to channel my energy, to channel that frustration into something positive. So instead of being angry at the teacher who didn't give us extra recess time, or angry at the school administrator for not allowing us to go out and play or do something recreational, I'm angry at a system that perpetuates this, a system that doesn't allow our young people to grow, to be young people. To be able to express themselves, to be able to find a venue and a channel, to be their best selves. And so now that anger and frustration that I had at 8, 9, and 10 at the teacher, at the individual, I'm no longer angry at the individual, but I'm angry at a system, and I'm seeking to change that system and seeking to use my newly found voice that I've been able to step into as this process has grown to now activate and advocate for real systemic change. So just to reiterate the connector, and I'm being modest because I did act up. Any of my teachers who are probably watching now, or paraprofessionals, coming through the special education system, it's a family. I was in classrooms with 12 students and 1 teacher and 1 paraprofessional. So I was always in a self-contained setting because my behavior was so out of hand, for lack of a better term. But finding my voice in activism and organizing really, really helped turn the page and allow me to not fall into a space of being a statistic, an unfortunate statistic, but being able to use my voice, to use my anger, use my passion, use my frustration in a positive way to impact others. And lastly, because I see some questions coming up, I want to just say this, that I want to also encourage people that don't feel that they have an emotional connection to change, or emotional connection to something that they want to do or build, to find out what that is and build it, and redirect your energy towards making yourself your best possible self in the light of whatever you decide to do, as a young person, as a middle-aged person, as any type of person that wants to change the direction of your life. Attach it to something else. That's important.
Perfect. And Khalil, before I get to one question that jumped out at me in the chat, I'm going to sort of relate it to Queens College. And I remember hearing your story of your introduction to Queens College as a result of Hurricane Sandy. And to a certain degree, I sort of, in the few minutes that we might have on this topic, what brought you to Queens College? You came to Queens College as a result of Hurricane Sandy. Then you came back a few years later. Can you tell me about that? Share that with us.
Absolutely. I think this is a central part of my story and of my growth, because my activism sort of to take flight after Superstorm Sandy. So as folks know, Superstorm Sandy devastated our communities about 8-9 years ago. I think it's 8 years this year. And so many people were displaced. In fact, statistically, we lost a quarter of our population here in the Rockaways, meaning people didn't return home after being impacted by Superstorm Sandy. Much appreciated. And so, one of the things, I stumbled on Queens College because my family, as many families here in the Rockaways, evacuated, and we were evacuated to Queens College, and we lived at the Queens College campus for several weeks after Superstorm Sandy. First we were at Queensboro, then we were transferred to Queens, and so we were sleeping in the cafeteria, living in the cafeteria with myself and hundreds of other families and individuals, both the cafeteria and the gymnasium. Very thankful that Queens College provided us that space to evacuate, because our community was devastated. Many folks that I know, including myself, didn't move back home or move back to the Rockaways until 6-7 months after the storm had hit and come ashores. I mean, you're talking about massive amounts of devastation. Whole communities ripped apart. Stores, almost a space where you couldn't recognize, a community where we went back home just to grab some clothes maybe 2 or 3 days after the storm, because the MTA was allowed to be restored and service was restored on the bus routes and things of that nature. And coming back home to the community was something I couldn't recognize. I didn't even know this was the Rockaway Peninsula that I've come to know and love over the last 6 years that I was been a resident here, and it was just extremely painful. But living at Queens College for the few months, I was able to on the campus, and I was in 11th grade when Superstorm Sandy hit. So, school really wasn't on my mind. Survival and getting resources for myself and my family and my community was on my radar. I frequently cut school to make sure that we at least had a place to lay our heads because of Superstorm Sandy. And frequently cut school to be able to be in the neighborhood, helping out. I organized with a youth group and a few organizations to do some work around food distribution. We were able to distribute thousands of meals and meals ready to eat, and blankets and supplies and resources to families across the Rockaway Peninsula that were devastated by Superstorm Sandy. And so Queens College provided me a space to live while doing that activism work and doing that relief work, quite frankly. And it's a critical part of my growth process, because in that moment of transition, in that moment of despair, in that moment of confusion, in that moment of frustration, I was still able to express myself and take the emotions that I had and the pain that myself and my family and my community was suffering through, and give that back to the community in the way of relief. Give that back to the community through the way of being on the front lines and helping those in need. I'll never forget this story of when I was at Queens College, and I actually, it's funny because Rockaway is really small, so everybody kind of knows everybody here in Rockaways. And so my family, we were like kind of, if you have Queens College, the Q Cafe, you know, where I think it's like where the recycle, when you put your bottle in and you recycle your stuff, it's like right in the cafeteria. So beds were lined up there, and beds were lined up like all along the wall, and then you had some people in the middle. And so we were like against the wall where like the gate is, the cafeteria, like right where the bottle, in that corner there. And, you know, like if I wasn't out like doing food distribution, I wasn't out, I'm just in the community, taking the 2 and 3 buses from Queens College back home to the Rockaways, I was just circling around the cafeteria trying to meet people. And like right across from us, and I'll never forget this story, right across from us was my teacher from Beach Channel Education Campus, where I attended school at Channelview School for Research in that campus. And he's like, "Don't I know you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't know you lived in the Rockaways, and you're also one of my former, power professionals when I was in 9th grade." He's like, "Yeah," and he started sharing his story and explaining how he had lost his home and his brother was disabled, who was there as well, and things of that nature. So even in a space of transition and in a space of lack of stability, like being at an evacuation center, which Queens College was for us, still able to build community, still able to meet friends, meet family, meet people from the community, and try our best to recreate what we had lost during Superstorm Sandy. A lot of people were separated. A lot of people just were faced with the unknown. And so I'll never forget that story, that Queens College worked to provide us that space to really, really be able to, even though we were struggling, really be able to get our minds off of it. They created a play area for the young people, and they really worked to keep our minds stimulated, even though everything that we were going through. People came from the community, volunteered, donated food, because for the first few days after the storm, we were only eating the military meals, which pack a lot of sodium. And we were only eating the military meals. And we got tired of eating them. So one day, as part of doing food distribution in the Rockaways, I actually took a shopping cart full of the MREs that Queens College was giving to the families because we were tired of them. And I went back home to the Rockaways and did some distribution. And we did some distribution with the National Guard and some of the groups like that. So there's a lot of key stories, that make up my experience at Queens College. Being a Sandy survivor, living at the evacuation center, and being in a space where we're really working towards trying to heal.
So can I ask you a little bit about Khalil, the student, and your activism on campus? Because I do remember you. I remember you being sort of ambassador to the library, trying to help us help students. So can you talk a little bit about your activism on campus?
Absolutely. So I think that one of the key things, and I'm a former Sikh student at Queens College, and Sikh is an opportunity program that allows people the opportunity to attend higher education institutions, with the academic and academic supports. And so being a Sikh student, we're already in a space of activism, right? Because we're a program that started out of a space of activism, started out of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. A program started to really create opportunities for Black and brown students who otherwise would not have them. And so when I came to Queens College, we we always were in that spirit because of Seek. And so in that vein, organized demonstrations on campus around making sure that we highlighted the importance of the Queens College Library, which is the clock tower of the library is named after a civil rights leader and a young person who also attended the school, at Queens College, and was able to essentially move past the moment that he was in. The moment that he was in, the young man that the clock tower is named after and the library is named in honor of, the era that he was in, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, the era that they were in, the era that they were in said that Black people could not vote. You were not allowed to vote, and if you did vote, you were subject to being killed or harmed. And so he moved past that moment. And I think that that's what activism is. And I think that that's what we absolutely work to do, as an activist and organizer on campus. So what did that look like? That looked like making sure that the students had the resources that they needed, making sure that the programs on campus aligned with the goals of the college. What do I mean by that? The college is a space where it's constantly been building to attract itself to Black and brown students, Black students in particular. And so by making sure that we have those programs, resources, Africana Studies Department, departments that would draw young Black people to want to get a higher education opportunity at this institution, I was at the forefront of that. And by working to elect our first Black female student, Haitian American, a student body president in Carmine Kaludin, many of the other folks who were on that dream team. That's the work that we did to really prioritize the needs of students, Black students on the campus, making sure that we had study nights, because studying was, especially during finals week, is incredibly important. So making sure we had those resources, making sure the college truly kept its word of learn so that we may serve, right? Making sure that we can learn as a student body that's in the minority, but also has the resources that we need to succeed so that we can serve. And so that's vitally important. And that's the work that we did.
Oh, that's perfect. There's a question in the chat that jumped out at me from Dana Fusco. She says, how do we help faculty see the importance of engaging community grassroots actions, especially 11367 needs this? Do you have any advice for that?
How do we engage faculty in the community? I think that, well, it's picking that issue, focusing on that issue, and getting folks to see how it contributes to a greater scheme of things, right? She said, or he said, 11367, which is a Flushing area.
Right.
The Flushing area, has a lot of issues around food insecurity. There's a lot of the same issues that are faced, here in Southeast Queens, or similar, just at a different level. Public housing is right across the street from Queens College. And so one of the things that I did as a student in which we involved faculty was we did a survey, a community needs assessment at Pomenac houses, right? This is something that we kind of engaged everyone on in partnership with Queens Community House and the Urban Studies Department, and see what the needs of the community are, see what the needs of our neighbors are, so that we could work in tandem to provide those needs. And in turn, while we're working together in tandem to provide those needs, we're giving back to the Flushing neighborhood. We're giving back to our faculty who are going to be involved in those efforts. And we're giving back to, of course, the overall community. So it's looking at an issue, identifying that issue, and looking at a path to getting a resolution to that issue, and looking at how we can pull faculty in, pull departments in, use the resources that we have as a campus and as a community to be able to best provide. And I think that that's kind of how you do it, right? Just picking that issue and getting folks tuned into it.
Okay, so another question that's in the chat.
And I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but I'm really passionate about this stuff.
No. You're wonderful. This is really interesting, and to see it coming from someone so young. I know people don't like to tout their age, but at 24, you've kind of lived a lifetime. So, and you have more to go. There's another question. Please share how academic legislation partnership can assist with policy reform for P20 education systems and beyond.
First of all, I appreciate the P20 education system piece, because it recognizes that education is continuous. It doesn't just stop after you graduate high school, and it doesn't just stop even if you're not in school. So shout out to the person who asked that question. Look, I think that what that partnership means and looks like is being in tune with the everyday issues and aspects of being a student, of being a faculty member, of running an institution whose sole mission is supposed to be and is leading and training our next future leaders and our next generation of organizers, our next generations of scientists, our next generations of mathematicians. That's what Queens College is, and that's what higher education institutions are and supposed to be. And so what that legislative partnership looks like is making sure that we're empowering that mission and empowering that vision, making sure that the faculty, students, leaders on campus have the tools that they need to get to that end, have the tools that they need so that they could be able to be their best possible selves. And so making sure that we're legislating to look at ways of making the SEEK program, which is vitally important to students of color, Black and brown students, making sure that they have the tools budgetarily and logistically that they need to be successful, making sure the adult college education programs that are on Queens College campus and all across CUNY have the resources that they need. These are for parents, these are for folks who are returning to school and want to get a higher education opportunity, but might lack some of the key resources that they need, like childcare, access to healthcare, and access to advisement, things of that nature. We want to make sure that we're legislatively and through initiatives empowering that work and empowering what the institution is doing to move folks forward.
Right. Oh, that's perfect. So I'll share a little personal tidbit about myself. And you mentioned the ACE program, the Adult Collegiate Education Program. Queens College has one, and I am a proud member and proud graduate of the ACE program. Will be profoundly grateful forever for what they've done for me and the path they put me on. So how do we reach out? I know you as an activist and in majority youth, how do we reach out to our adults to let them know that, life is not over, even though that they're beyond the typical student age, that there are opportunities? What do we do to get that to them and motivate them to want to reach out and further their educational paths as well?
It's a very interesting question, and I could best answer it by talking about my experience. Being a student in the Urban Studies program, we saw many different types of students, whether you were a student that's fresh out of high school to a student who's now returning. The Urban Studies program and many other programs on the campus provide opportunity for folks to be able to learn no matter what age you are, no matter what level of academia you are. And I was in my program, we were around a lot of adults, people who were seeking to advance themselves in their careers that they were in now and needed the extra degree or a master's degree instead of a bachelor's degree or additional bachelor's degree, needed that additional either certification or education. And so there are many, many opportunities that we've got to put out front and out forward for our adult learners so that they can understand that they can be a part of getting educated, getting the resources that they need so they can move up in the world. And so, for example, I believe CUNY provides free tuition for people who are 60 and over or 65 and older. Those are programs that we should be discussing and sharing with community. There's discounts for people who are part of a union, and they have all these different ways for you to get educated. It's just taking that extra step, having belief in yourself, that regardless if you're 60 or 50 or 40, that you should not feel intimidated by going back into the space of academia to advance yourselves. I was in classes with people who were 50 and 60 who were returning back to school because they wanted to be able to learn and enrich themselves, so that they can go back to their jobs or their communities to be able to serve. And so, when you ask that question, I think of a very, very good friend and mentor and second mom, I call her, of mine, Miss Aracelia Cook, who was a student with me and had served in the Department of Education as a paraprofessional and as a chapter leader, and many other amazing titles that she had and held. I think about people like her, who has already served out her tenure in the DOE and Department of Education and the things that she's done, but she still wanted to come back to school because it was a sense of fulfillment for her. It was a sense of being able to give back to community, because the goal in which her degree that she wanted to attain was to be able to start a community center, a foster care system, and needed that academic push to be able to get that start, to be able to provide that resource, or felt she needed that. These are the stories of CUNY students. These are the stories of public education, P through 20, as the young lady said, opportunities. And so that's what the college campus embodies. And we want to be able to ensure that they have those resources and they know that they have the opportunity to be able to come home, come on back, and get an education so that they can be able to best serve. We learn so that we can serve.
Oh, okay. That's and that young lady was Sorabelle. We met with her this morning. So
yes, it just went so fast. I didn't see.
Yes, yes, she's with our education Dr. Yaneho. I always mispronounce her name. My apologies. I'm listening to you, and I recognize that we have similar paths. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I still consider myself a Brooklyn girl. I tend to say I live in Queens. I'm from Brooklyn, but I recognize that being in Queens for the last 25 years or close to 25 years, it has become my home. I want to know what your path is. Is there something you wished you had done differently? You still have a ways to go. So I recognize that you're at the beginning stage of your career. Is there something that you look back on, even in these short years, that you wish, if I had to do that all over again?
Yeah, absolutely. That moment where there was this transition of me stepping into a different phase of my life, right? The young man that acted out, who's frustrated, and didn't have a voice. One thing I would do differently is in that space of transition to where I began the path where I am now, is look at ways of how I could have brought more folks with me along that journey, right? So if I could have been able to better express myself at that age, and then better express that feeling and sentiment and the next steps to my colleagues, to the young people around me. Definitely always moving both spiritually and mentally in the idea of how many people can we bring along the journey, how many people we can bring along to provide them that voice or provide them that direction that they need to be their best possible selves. And I always always push myself to see how many people can we push in that direction. And I always want to look back at any instances or points in my life, particularly in that moment that I said, the moment of transition. I want to say like 12 to 13, 14, because that's when I started to improve and find my voice. But how many people can we bring along? How many people can we empower? How many people can we impact? How many people can we affect? Is something that I'm always questioning at any point in my life. Even now, having the opportunity to serve in the state legislature. How many people from my neighborhood can I get to volunteer with us? How many people from my neighborhood and our community can I get to empower, to change their direction, to change their sense of self, right? Because a lot of my community, a lot of my neighbors and friends and family, people who live around here in and around the district, are going and struggling through mental health, are going through spaces in which they're not empowered, are going through spaces of fear, of struggle, and need that hand to lift them up and tell them that they're great, tell them that that they can be their best selves, to empower. And if I don't do anything else as an assembly member or as a community organizer and activist, I hope to be able to empower my neighbors. I hope to be able to empower the next leaders of our generation and the future generations. I hope that we turn their struggle into a space of learning and opportunity. And that's one of the key models and spirit of the Sikh program, being a Sikh student, is struggling to learn, because you learn to struggle, right? You struggle in that process of learning. You struggle in that process of empowerment, and then you learn that struggle is vitally important and central to your development, central to your ability to go on and do great things in your neighborhood and in your community. And not everybody is going to be able to follow this path, or be able to learn from their struggle, or be able to be in a space where they have struggled and can translate that into something positive. But my goal and looking back on what I can do differently is, did I help? Did I uplift? Did I empower as many people as I possibly could?
Oh, that's great. And there's another question in the chat that I think is interesting. And I'm gonna do it in reverse. It's by William. And he says a majority of students are not involved in community affairs to the degree that you were. Is there any way to encourage the more traditional Queens College student to be more politically active?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be to the scale of which I was, or the person before me was, etc. You set the scale. That's the thing about activism and organizing. If there's something that you want to focus on, and there's something you're passionate about, both politically, socially, academically, economically, whatever area of theory or thought or space, you decide the pace of which you give to that issue, you give to that cause, you give to that circumstance, and you're able to still continuously be impactful in that space. What do I mean by that? William, if you're passionate, and I saw that name this time, moving fast, but if you're passionate about academia, what little steps can you take? Let's say you have a limited amount of time. What little steps can you take to push academia forward, push education forward? Whether it's attending a town hall, whether it's planning your own, whether it's having something as simple as a community discussion, or just talking to your friends about it and trying to advance it. Those are ways that you could push an inch at addressing the things that you care about. And the traditional student doesn't have a ton of time, but they have passion. And so it's just directing you all to that passion, and being able to understand that you are limited, or you might put limits around yourself, and that's a whole nother argument. But how can you give as much as you can? to that bucket of change. And I think that that's the best way to kind of summarize it.
Oh, that's perfect. A question just popped up from Farah, and she said, what is it like to be serving in government in a time of many young activists getting a seat at the table? And you had mentioned earlier, hey, if you don't have a seat at the table, then bring your own chair. I think that was
Mhm.
the quote that
Yes.
stuck in my brain now, and I'm going to
Mhm.
borrow that from time to time. So how do you respond to Farah?
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you, Farah. Farah is an important part of my growth process and being a student on campus. So thank you very much for being here today. To everyone who's here. Right now, government is supposed to be leading our folks out of what has been a seismic shift in our daily lives. The COVID-19 pandemic has been something that has really, really, really impacted our communities and will for generations. And so a lot of what we're supposed to be doing as young people who traditionally have not had a seat at the table, I'm going to interview, it's really important to make sure that as young people we're getting that seat at the table. And so what her question is that how do we understand the spaces that we're in as young people to be able to impact change and to be able to move government forward. And what that looks like is bringing our issues to the table and making sure that we're at the forefront of them. It's myself as the youngest African American by God's grace in state history. And then I have another colleague of mine who's just 2 years older than me in the assembly, who serves the South Bronx and that community. So it's just really making sure that we stick together on the issues of young people and empowering young people, but also providing that hand up, right? Not it's not a handout, but it's a hand up, a hand for us to be able to lift up the next generation of young people. Because I'm not going to be 24 forever. I'm not going to be in the seat forever. But how many people can I, in my journey, impact and uplift and empower? That's going to be the defining factor of my tenure as an assembly member, but also as a community leader and organizer.
Okay. That's great. So we're coming down towards the last less than 10 minutes of our session. And I think I want to give you a chance, one, to wrap up, and two, I want to ask this question, and you can incorporate it into your wrap up of, like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Any plans to further your political agenda? Not
I
putting
mean,
you on.
well, it's a tough question, right? Because I feel that having the opportunity to move up is a privilege, is something that you have to work really, really hard at. Even being a community organizer and activist, I had to prove myself in certain spaces and work extra hard to be able to build the support and to build the confidence in our community to be able to take up that mantle and to lead. And I think that 10 years from now looks like me building community, making sure that we are engaging, making sure that we're empowering, so that whatever that next step looks like, people have a faith and courage in me, that my commitment is not to trying to advance myself or advance, me and blow up my head or whatever, but it's to advance the community. It's to move our neighbors forward. It's to move our systems that have perpetuated pain and poverty and frustration and a lack of solace forward. And so that's what I hope to be judged by 10 years from now, if there is an opportunity for a promotion, and that's my hope.
That's great.
So
And
no
so,
hints.
So you've truly lived up to the epitome of our Queens College motto. We learn so that we may serve, and you've done that immensely. And to consider that at the young age of 24, and you're not done yet, you know. So what do you say to that student sitting there in, let's say, middle school? As you were that kid that wanted to fight and struggle with everything, not struggle, but fight everyone around you. What do you say to them about where you are today in this place in this time?
Yeah, absolutely. It's reaching back into. I was that middle school kid that you described, that like struggled mightily, and so what I say to them, if I have a moment with them, and if I'm able to talk to them, I will say to them that you are who we have been waiting for in the respect and an aspect of being able to empower them to understand that the powers that be are them, meaning like we're moving them into those seats of power and into positions of leadership. And I would want to empower them by my experiences, by my struggles, by the things that I went through, so that they can feel the courage and feel the ability to be a part of a journey that helps them to self-improve. And that's something I would try to convey to a young person who's in middle school, who lives in that single parent household, who's struggling with grades, who's struggling to express themselves, who's struggling with, quite frankly, identity, trying to find themselves. I would say was a struggle for me, trying to figure out who I am, what I want to do, where I want to be, and how do I get there? How do I have the necessary supports around me, or how do I build the necessary supports around me to get to where I need to be or want to be? And that's not something a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old is thinking about, but sparking the discussion, putting into them the perspective of empowerment, but putting into them the perspective and helping them understand that they can get to where they want to be and where they need to be is important. And it's an important step of growth. It's an important step of leadership. It's an important step of self-empowerment, but it's also an important step of changing the narrative and rolling back some of the struggle and the pain and hurt that they may be faced with, and turning it into something where they come out on top, where they come out empowered, where they come out in a space of confidence and leadership. And I think that that's important.
Oh, Khalil, thank you so much. You have to imagine that the whole of Queens College is so proud of you and your accomplishments, and we recall you running around campus doing you. And the one thing that I'm taking away from this is, as you said, you know, struggle to learn and learn to struggle, and you'll see you'll come out on the other side. And so we really truly appreciate and thank you for being here with us today. We'd also like to thank the Queens College Office of the President, President Wu and his team, Provost Hendry and her office, and in addition to Dr. Sarabel Yanejo for putting these programs together. There are plenty of programs. This is only week one, and imagine what is yet to come. So please, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know that I am proud. I look for Khalil. I follow him on Facebook. You know, that's my only social media platform. I'm not a Twitter or a tweeter, but Facebook. And
Don't worry, you're not missing anything.
and so if you want to know what's happening, follow Khalil, and he'll take you on that journey with him. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you, Assembly Member Khalil M. Anderson. We truly appreciate you spending your time and sharing your time with us and your insights on this important journey on youth activism. Thank you. And
Thank you so
everyone,
much.
enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you.